This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, if even Kirk can punch Nazis, we can too!
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review critique podcast. I am Gep, and I am joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi!
This week we watched one of the better and less known episodes, because everybody knows they did this episode, but I feel like nobody knows what it's about.
Yeah, it's a episode that's more known for its aesthetics than it is its substance.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, we'll get to that.
This episode is called Patterns of Force, which is a generic-y sounding name that could mean anything.
True. Patterns of force could be, say, we have a puzzle to solve and we need to apply a force to various things in a pattern, or maybe a timing or something like that, and we'd be able to solve it that way.
Yeah, but instead it's space Nazis.
Oh yeah, it's space Nazis instead, yes.
And not like, oh look, it's an obvious allegory for Nazis.
No, they actually have the swastikas and iron cross, things like that.
Yeah, it's just frickin' Nazis.
We'll get into why when we go through the episode.
We've seen good and bad stuff from this writer before. This episode was written by John Meredith Lucas, who wrote up to this point. There's more episodes after this, but up to this point we have seen his writing in The Changeling, Journey to Babel, Game Masters of Triskelion, and Piece of the Action.
Wait. Piece of the Action? That's another, old-timey theme episode.
It's like there's a pattern.
Yes. Interesting.
All right, there's too many guest stars to go over, so let's just suffice it to say that most of them were, known guest star people like we always get on this show. Nobody was a particular standout, and a couple people don't even have Wikipedia pages.
Some of their names are Richard Evans, Laura Noland, David Bryan, Skip Homier, yeah, and so on.
Yeah, we've got a couple of people. We've got David Bryan as Professor John Gill, who's one of the main people. Valora Noland is playing Doris, who's our girl for the episode.
Yeah, I didn't even get her name until way into the episode, which is a little awkward. So I was I have my notes. So it's the lady person?
This one is so bad because it's just Nazi planet, weird stuff going on, capturing, oh, a girl.
And only one.
Just because.
Yeah. Okay, this is a little confusing.
It's just they need their female guest star of the week, I suppose.
Yes. And not say 2 or 3 or something like that, Just one.
Not unless there's a harem situation.
And then it's awkward for other reasons.
Yeah. All right, I feel like there's going to be a lot of junk this episode, so we should probably jump in here.
All right, let's do this.
But there are 20 guest stars. This is a big freaking episode. The Enterprise is approaching the planet Xeon and Echos. We just passed the planet Xenon, but no, we want the other planet. It's okay, you don't have to shout about it.
Of course, Xeon there is also a gas. We should remember that. So maybe they are implying it's a gassy planet?
Both of these planets are inhabited. Xeon is an early spacefaring super peaceful society, and Echos is an anarchic barbarian world, constantly in a state of war.
Haven't we been to planets like that before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. This time it's 2 different planets instead of one people's super peaceful and the other is super weird. I don't know why it's different planets this time, but because
to change it up, I guess.
They're looking for a man named Professor John Gill, who is a Federation historian that came to Echos to study the local population, but has been out of contact for 6 months.
And they do draw attention that John Gill has a personal connection to Kirk. He was his instructor back at the academy and things like that. So everything about history Kirk learned from this guy probably. So that might explain some things.
Yeah. To get too much farther, the Enterprise is attacked by a missile that is actually too advanced for either planet to have made as far as they know. It is armed with a thermonuclear warhead that they're able to blow it up because they are, space magic.
Yeah, the Enterprise is immune to such things as dukes. Ha 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 ha.
Kirk and Spock equip themselves with subdermal implants that the Enterprise can use to track them when they beam down, which, like, why is this not standard?
No, that would make sense, you know?
Like, just like you're in the Federation now, here's your subdermal implant so we can beam you up from dangerous situations whenever we need to. Off you go.
In fact, I believe Stargate Atlantis started having that as a thing where, it's like, yeah, our people keep getting, like, abducted. Let's, like, make it so we can beam them out of places.
Mm-hmm. Seems like a particularly good idea. They put on what looks like 30s, 40s era workman clothes and beam down to what looks like a 30s, 40s era street corner.
Wait a moment. These clothes look a little familiar. Were these the same ones they wore in City on the Edge of Forever?
Unconfirmed, but they do look it.
Yeah.
They came back in those outfits, so may as well keep them around.
Yeah.
They're extreme vintage.
Authentic, man.
They soon meet a man who's running away from something unseen as he falls down in the street and yells for them to hide.
Okay. Let's hide.
This is Isaac, a person we will run into more later.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk and Spock hide as they see Isaac arrested by Nazis. Like, full-on swastika armband, boots, hat, like, Nazis.
This is a little weird. Okay. This is... Do we time travel, or is this what the locals are doing now?
Yep, and they keep calling Isaac Xeon scum. So, like, have we gotten their Nazis yet?
Specifically call him a Xeon pig.
Mm.
Yes.
Subtle.
Yep.
This is followed by an announcement broadcast through random TV screens that are placed along the street, apparently for propaganda purposes.
Yeah, as you do.
They report on how the Fatherland has destroyed an incoming spaceship, presumably the missile they launched at the Enterprise.
So I guess the invasion's off then, where we're safe, right?
We are introduced to Deputy Fuhrer Melikon. The names in this episode.
In my notes, I called him Melons. Because I kept autocorrecting it to that.
And Doris, a young blonde woman who's some sort of Nazi hero. And finally, to the Fuhrer, John Gill.
Wait a moment, this is the guy we came here to look for. What's he doing up there in charge of all this fascism here?
Yeah. It's not like the Federation's ever condoned fascism.
Moving on.
Before Kirk can speculate on why John Gill is on their screen as the head of the Nazi state, they are attacked by another Nazi. But thankfully for them, he's about as dumb as everyone who tries to capture them, because they do the standard look over there and knock him out.
It's like, oh no, this guy's a Xeon intruder. He tricked me. Get him. Now I'm going to punch you. Okay.
They play Strip the Nazi and give Spock a nice little Nazi uniform.
Well, Spock, this is getting a little awkward, but okay. It's one in Rome, I guess.
Complete with helmet to cover the ears.
Cover up the ears, yeah. That was convenient, actually.
They use this new uniform to trick a Nazi officer, also taking his uniform, and now Kirk and Spock are both in Nazi disguise.
And this is the Kirk gets the Gestapo uniform this time, I believe.
Spock even comments on how convincing a Nazi Kirk makes.
Yep.
No one's arguing.
Nope.
They try to sneak into Nazi headquarters, but Spock forgets to salute a passing officer and gets them both immediately captured.
Well, I guess we have to give them points for not being completely clueless mooks here?
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting one. Like, we're going to haphazardly sneak in with no plan. Oh, that didn't work.
Yep. Wait, our bluff skill isn't high enough. I guess we have to go on our fallback of getting captured then.
They are ineffectively tortured with whipping.
Yeah, when a problem comes along.
Spock doesn't even bruise. Like, Kirk's, tanking it, but Spock just no-sells the whole thing and doesn't even have bruises.
Well, he does have some green marks where, he's been whipped, because, he's got green blood and all that, right?
They are tortured until another Nazi official called Enig enters. He orders them to be imprisoned instead of continually tortured and killed because the guards are doing such a bad job at interrogating them.
You've gotten nothing out of them, so just lock them up for a while and let them be sore.
That's true. None of them have German accents, at least. None of them have the dumb, Nazi German accent that you would expect from this era of television.
Yeah, maybe a good thing, because that would make even less sense.
In the cell, they meet up with Isaac again, who
hi there.
Gives them some backstory on how the Zeons came here to help civilize the Echos. We'll get to that later.
This smells like an imperialism to me.
A few years ago, all the Echos started being Nazis, and now they are in danger of wiping out the Xeon.
Whoops.
Kirk and Spock came up with a plan to escape because they can dig the transmitters out of their skin with dull metal that they pulled out of a bed.
Yep. And they basically make a laser phaser gun to cut open the door.
Yeah, I suppose the theory is the crystals they're using held close together and then put up next to a normal incandescent light bulb bounce the light around enough that it makes a laser that can cut through the bars.
Yeah, that doesn't work like that.
Magic space crystals.
There is something to be said about light pumping and all that too, and between crystals like that, but your incandescent light's not going to really help.
So they free themselves and bring Isaac along as a guide.
It's good to have a local who, well, maybe he's not a local. Never mind.
They make their way to a laboratory that Isaac knows how to find for some reason.
Wait a moment. Has he been here before? Has he secretly been planted here to lead them astray?
They're not doing anything interesting. In this laboratory, they find their communicators dismantled and find that their phasers have been sent to another building, so no guns.
Well, I hope we remember to grab these phasers before we leave at some point.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Spock thinks he can fix the communicators, and Isaac leads them out to the street where they go down a manhole into a bunch of caves that is apparently the hiding place of the Xenon Resistance.
Excellent. We found some friends, some allies here. I also want to draw attention to how they managed to leave the Nazi headquarters there. They actually just dress up Kirk and Spock again and put Isaac on a stretcher and just sort of carry him out. It's like, oh yeah, they're dying in there or something like that. And
I should mention, I've meant to mention this before we started the thing, but given that this is like the fourth weird little "we're Nazis" joke that they have in this episode is light, frivolous, and filled with jokes.
I guess it's trying to play into that trope of those wacky Nazis.
So now in the Resistance headquarters, they meet their leader, Abram.
Abram. Not Abraham, but Abram.
Yeah. Not Abraham for the not Zion.
Yep.
They're very subtle in this episode.
Yes.
It's extreme amounts of subtlety. I can't even tell what's going on. They agree to let Kirk and Spock stay here and fix their communicators, but while Spock is working, Darius, who we remember from the Nazi hero video, and a contingent of guards accost them.
Oh no, the Nazis, they found us in this secret underground lair. Clearly Isaac has betrayed us by leading them here.
They shoot Abram and have Kirk and Spock at gunpoint, but they do their turning the tables thing that they shouldn't be able to pull off, capturing Darius, at which point Abram gets up, tells them that it was in fact all a test to make sure they weren't just Nazi spies, and that Darius has been working for them the whole time.
Oh, well, okay. I guess that actually might explain why it was so easy for Kirk to do the turnabout thing on them. Because if they're not actually trying to kill them.
This is surprising to a few people because in true Resistance fashion, very few members of the Underground know who anyone else is so that they can keep information segmented.
It's actually kind of useful.
This sorta comes into play later.
Yeah.
Sorta.
Kirk
reveals to them that John Gill is in fact an alien.
Dun dun dun. Wait, we already knew that.
They need to get in contact with him so they can fix all this weird Nazi mess they seem to be in.
If only we could talk to him, this would fix everything, right?
Now, apparently, Darius can get them into a party where the leadership is about to hear a speech that Gill is going to give them about wiping Xenon out for good.
Well, it's convenient there's a party, but bad that there's going to be that whole genocide thing.
Kirk, Spock, and Isaac put on... Isaac. I can't even keep this stupid, fake, not Jewish name straight. Ugh.
I didn't catch his name until halfway through the episode with like half of these names, so I just called him Prisoner throughout.
Kirk, Spock, and Isaac put on uniforms again, and pretend to be a documentary film crew making a movie about Darius. Which, Nazis were pretty famous for their dumb propaganda documentary films. So
that this actually kind of makes sense.
In fact, don't have a good place to put this. This episode actually contains footage from Triumph of the Will in it, in like a scene of Hitler with a car.
It's very much a fair bit of crossover here.
They learn that Gil's speech will be broadcast through a TV for security reasons. It's because no one's allowed to be near him. Conveniently, though, the broadcast booth is through the wall on the other side of the TV.
So they can't be near them, but they're near him, just in a different sort of way.
He can't be in the location giving the speech, so he's like locked in a small room with 2 guards.
Are they worried about him leaving? Interesting.
They see Gil through a window as they distract the 2 people guarding the head of the nation.
Well, they're the guards on the inside of the building. There's guards outside. There's a bunch of officers in the other room. Maybe they should have a few more guards still, yes.
I'd be more impressed if they still weren't taken out by Kirk's, hey, look at that, tactics.
Yep.
They see Gil through a window as he's being positioned in front of some microphones. He's not moving and looks pretty catatonic.
Wait a moment, something's up with this. He's not a furious dictator. He's a passive person who's not really there, actually.
Kirk decides they need to bring down McCoy because he might be sick or drugged. To that end, they find themselves a empty cloakroom. Spock uses his newly repaired communicator to tell them to beam down McCoy in a Nazi uniform. There's some hilarity where he can't get his boots on. It's funny, I guess. I don't know.
Well, maybe McCoy was just so upset about having to be put in that sort of outfit, and no, that's not the joke at all.
It's just he doesn't know how to put on boots. It's the entire joke.
Yep.
They have a brief run-in with Enog again, who doesn't recognize them from the prison, and also takes their very flimsy excuse about McCoy being kind of drunk, so that's why they're hiding him in a closet.
Well, that's convenient. They didn't recognize him.
They are too late to get to Gil before his speech, and they all watch as he says semi-randomized sentences and phrases, looking drugged and tired the whole time while the room applauds. It's like there might be some commentary.
Yes. Here are some platitudes, and they kind of match up with what his lips are doing, but his lips are behind a microphone, so you can't super tell.
Also, everyone's applauding at what's very obviously random, disconnected, sort of patriotic-sounding sentences.
Which I guess actually kind of makes sense for fascism.
Yeah. This is as cutting as the commentary gets here, people. After the speech, Melkon, who's, remember, is the deputy Fuhrer, there's too many characters in this fucking thing, interprets the speech as an order to launch a final attack on Xeon.
So that thing that you said that we were going to be doing, we're doing it. Okay, I guess.
The crew easily overpowers the guards protecting Gil and breaks into the broadcast room. McCoy thinks that Gil is really, really, really drugged up, but Kirk orders him to give him stimulants anyway so they can talk to him, despite mild amounts of protesting that it's going to kill him.
I'm not going to complain too much about this guy possibly dying, honestly. But McCoy, as a doctor, probably should,
There's a brief debate about whether they should use the Enterprise to kill the invasion fleet, killing thousands to save millions. They don't spend very long on it, even though it's probably the most interesting philosophical debate of the episode.
Like, well, we caused this problem by leaving a guy that probably shouldn't have been here in the first place to do all this crap, and do we interfere to prevent people from dying because of that? Let's not think about that and focus on everything else.
Gil wakes up and says that when he got here, the planet was just too fragmented, so he used an example from history, which Spock agrees that the Nazis were the most efficient state in the entirety of Earth history on which to model a government.
So I guess Spock believes the Nazi propaganda then.
Yeah, Spock's like, oh yeah, the Nazis were great. I mean, there was the genocide thing, but they were great. They were really the best, efficient people. I mean, there was the genocide thing, but they were really the best.
Wasn't this, flipped around when Khan was hanging out and people were like, yeah, Khan's great, and Spock's like, what? It's weird how this is kind of flipped here.
They decide they need to buy some time while Gil sobers up enough to make a retraction speech or something. It's really not particularly clear what their plan here is, but they take Spock to Malkin as a distraction so he can do some rather obvious, here's an inferior race, look at me, examine him like an animal, funny Nazi things.
So it's stuff that, was kind of very tropey at this point, but is honestly kind of disgusting kind of stuff.
And they make Spock go through it again.
Yeah.
Because they're racist on this show. They get Gil awake enough for him to go, hey, let's not attack the Xenons. Also, Malkin is the real bad guy. He's been drugging me to seize power.
Dun dun dun. Let's have Malkin arrested, yeah.
Malkin shoots Gil through a wall, who dies. He says, even historians fail to learn the lessons of history.
In this case, clearly that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
Gil, you idiot.
Sure, let's generalize all historians. You. Isak shoots Malkin, and then Enog prevents the soldiers from killing them all, because he's also with the Resistance. Ha-ha!
Ta-ta! That's why he didn't recognize them intentionally. Ha-ha!
He says now they can live the way they were intended to live as productive, peace-loving Nazis.
I am confused, but okay, I guess.
They all leave because now... Okay, so now they've killed the evil leadership and everyone can go back to being peaceful, efficient Nazis. So everything's fine because they killed the one evil leader guy.
And it's not the systematic constructs all around them that empower those leaders, but it's still very much present.
So that's how they leave things on the planet. Now we go to the ship, where Spock is confused how Gil would have modeled this whole society on Nazis, despite him being all gung-ho for it earlier. Kirk says that Gil just didn't learn the proper lessons from history, that the problem with the Nazis wasn't just that their leaders were bad people, but that the entire fascist system creates a problem in itself because you give someone that much power and they will become corrupted. But it's fine that we left them on the planet with that system because we killed the one evil leader.
Yeah, and now that they're leaderless, that will just solve all the problems and there just won't be another leader that replaces them, right? Despite us kind of explicitly having a couple of the resistance people's like, yeah, we're going to be the leaders now.
Also, we hate them and are ready to kill all the Nazis. McCoy chimes in that absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Aren't we super clever for coming up with a phrase? Spock lists off a bunch of Earth dictators. McCoy gets angry and Kirk goes, no, we just stopped one civil war. Let's not start another. Ha 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 ha.
So yeah.
Yeah.
That was Patterns of Force. The holy crap?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we got kind of double interference going on here. We got a historian who is obviously terrible at history. We have people believing Nazi propaganda and then thinking it's a good thing, I guess.
Oh, there's so many problems.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with the easier one, I guess.
Yeah.
The Nazis were the most efficient state in history, so it excuses some other crap they were doing was like blatant propaganda.
Yeah.
Their massive resurgence that people cite from, like they say in this episode. They went from being a like war-torn, demoralized, barely scraping by nation to a superpower in like 4 years. Oh my god. They didn't. They greatly increased military spending while introducing like rationing and other poverty measures to the general population. And also their entire government was based on massive amounts of deficit spending that they had to pillage other nations for later.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we're going to make it look like everything's great, but really we're kind of pushing the edge where just things being disrupted a little bit could basically destroy, result in unraveling of society. And part of those things that requires the system to keep going is to invade other people.
Which is one of the things that happens. There's actually a somewhat interesting economic debate about whether fascism counts as its own economic system or not. because there's some similarities in fascist systems as far as the economics go, but they also usually incorporate the existing system that was there before into the fascist state system.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of this fascism is being adapted for the terrain that's already present. But once it sort of has its hooks into the system as is, it sort of expands that and kind of pushes the limit as far as abusing what is there and trying to leverage things to help grow that centralized state power.
Yeah, so there's a debate whether it counts fully as its own system or not. Like, you have Germany was capitalist and then was fascist capitalist, and like Russia started into communism and then was fascist communism. So there's enough similarities that there's some argument that fascism in itself is its own kind of unique economic system. And one of the things that kind of typifies that is the state control of production, either directly or indirectly. The fascist state has control over production. And that does lead to somewhat rapid growth. We actually see that historically through like the Bronze Age civilizations, which used a system similar to this called palacism, where all of the state wealth was kind of sent to the leading classes, who then divvied it up as they saw fit to keep the kingdom running. And you get an actual pretty efficient, can be well-run state economic system out of that grows fairly quickly. The problem is it is incredibly slow to respond to change.
Now, if you have the plans laid out and you are pushing for these sort of marks here, that is, you've created this system, this plan, with certain assumptions going on as far as what resources available, what the conditions are going to be, what the productivity that is physically possible is. And if something disrupts that in any way, suddenly is like, well, we can't really adapt to this at all because we were not prepared for this sort of disaster here.
Yeah, so we even see that in Nazi Germany. They did grow fairly quickly with a massive amount of deficit spending, but, countries do that. It's not the complete end of the world if you go into deficit spending. But as the military stuff went on, there were extreme food shortages. They started with food rationing because of their insular nature that, will cut off trade and be a completely self-reliant state, which immediately led to food and consumer good shortages, which just carried on through the war. By the time the war was ending, the state was going to collapse under its own weight regardless of what happened.
Yeah, it's when people don't have anything to eat, they don't exactly become prone to trusting you when you are telling them to do things, and that kind of undermines a lot of the core control mechanisms of fascism.
And you get the propaganda both ways. Everyone was believing the Nazi propaganda. They were actually incredibly good at propaganda. They literally wrote the book on it.
And it's it might seem like absurd and over the top, but it's absurd and over the top can work, honestly.
And something to remember is this propaganda was coming out before the war.
Yes. Yeah, for years and years.
Like when Hitler and the Nazis were taking power, they were sending out these newsreels and all these things to the United States, to other countries. You were getting basically press releases from Germany going, look how great our government is, oh my god. And they had that whole thing where they hosted the Olympics. Just this is becoming a superpower and we believe all the propaganda coming out of this country.
And internally to Germany, that's very much a you've empowered us and now keep empowering us and keeping us in power and keep following our rule in order for us to keep doing this thing that's totally for real good for you guys, right? Outside of Germany, then that sort of stuff was also sort of fueling sort of homegrown fascist movements. It's like, oh, this seems to be working in Germany. Maybe we should try this too. It seems like a great thing with all these trains and things running on time.
Also, after the war, it's kind of hard for us to remember now. But when the United States and other contemporary nations entered the war against the Nazi Germany, all of the horrible atrocities and things that they are known for now were not common knowledge. These things didn't start coming out until very close to the end of the war.
Yeah.
So you got a certain amount of propaganda the other direction too, because especially for the United States, who waited a long time to enter the war, no, you're not going to enter the war and be like, well, these guys are a failing economic state that's going to collapse under its own weight given time anyway. Like, you have to oh my god, look at this superpower who is rising to challenge us. We need to put all of our force into this.
You have to play them up as a credible threat.
Which they were, and no one's arguing that. They put so much into their military spending that they had one of the largest militaries on the planet at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But you get the propaganda coming in both directions. You have here is a credible threat to us at an equal or even possibly greater level to what we're doing, and we need to. This is why we need to put so much force and effort into fighting this. And that kind of stayed after the fact. With it's impossible not to see. Now, of course, we have you have neo-Nazis and neo-fascists who, of course, kind of deify the Nazi regime that way, but even people who criticize them fall into this trap of looking into their propaganda and trying to show a certain amount of respect for what they were doing, despite trying to criticize them.
Yeah, it kind of comes off really. I'm not trying to say like cheap, but it sort of makes it more difficult to then trust the folks that are trying to condemn them, which is kind of unfortunate.
And this episode managed to fall into every freaking stupid Nazi trope.
Yeah.
So every time this happens, people always do this when they're trying to do some sort of Nazi commentary. They'll get their stand-in Nazis, which I will admit you don't often see as just here's Nazis, but
here are
on
some
a
actual Nazis,
planet.
yes.
that we specifically taught to be Nazis. But the other people, you always get this when they have a stand-in for the people that the Nazis were trying to kill, because they, for some reason, always seen the need to put some extra shit in there. In this episode, the Zeons, the definitely not Zeons, were an invading force. They weren't native to that planet. They were a foreign power that came in, benevolently or not. Obviously, that doesn't give anyone the right to go off and try to kill an entire people based on some kind of weird racial superiority idea.
But it does weaken the argument that these people from the other planet were just sort of sitting around doing their own thing, and these guys just decided to become jerk faces.
Which is the anti-Semitic German propaganda that they had at the time, that Jewish peoples were an invading force that had come in to take over Germany from the pure German ethnostate.
So, yeah, it's a little absurd that it's basically just sort of stating the propaganda as the fact here. Yeah.
And they do this in TV because they want to show you a clear, easy to understand divide. And anytime you do that, you are basically saying, yes, this was one group of people who were completely distinct from this other group of people who were fighting each other. Not like this group arbitrarily decided to take one group of people inside their own country and demonize and kill them.
Because I guess they don't trust people to, internalize that people can just be crappy to each other for stupid reasons.
I think
I don't know how else to explain it.
I think it's just so you can easily create the good guy, bad guy, black and white divisions that we want to have. They want you to be able to immediately look at the screen and go, well, that's the bad one and that's the good one. And I can tell because they've put in clear signifiers that I can look at and immediately recognize so I don't get confused as the audience.
Which, for better or worse, people need more media and things like that is willing to be more subtle than that. Yeah, I guess sometimes it's good to have the very black and white sort of contrastings, but when you're trying to put forth the some complicated ideas, then sometimes you need to be able to play in the gray zone where, yeah, it's hard for us outside from this conflict to tell the difference between these people. So maybe this whole persecution is just absurd on its face.
Also, very often fall into this weird. It's the same propaganda that the Nazis are saying, but they got it wrong thing, which is very weird to me. Because they almost always do some variation on the people that they are persecuting are from a different place and did come in as a quasi-invading force however many years ago. But they weren't here to destroy, they were here to help.
A little awkward. For whose definition of help here?
But also, like, it's just like, oh, see, they were right that, a Zionist invasion came into Germany however many years ago. They were just wrong in the fact that they were there to be helpful.
So, which is kind of an excuse for imperialism of a different sort.
It's basically saying, like, this was an imperialist invasion, you were right, but it was a benevolent one. Why are you so peeved about it?
You should be happy that people are coming here to educate you for your own good.
Which, again, is, like, not a thing. These were people who lived there. These were native, like, German people who were living in Germany and were then persecuted for their ethnic backgrounds and no other reason. They were not an invading force. It was not some freaking conspiracy. It was not another group of people that came from another state.
Yeah, these are people that were there for centuries. And the whole invasion thing was complete fabrication. And we have this explicitly different thing in this media, in this and other examples out there, that is just so rotten because it's just muddling things up just so badly. And
then this other planet, the Xenons were technologically more advanced. One could say wealthier and in charge of the, money and technology because Star Trek doesn't use money.
Yeah.
You're falling into a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff in this episode in the people that you're trying to hold up as the, also this whole frickin' line of maybe by resisting the Nazis, we're in danger of becoming as bad as the Nazis because, it's just going to turn around. It's just going to turn around and then the oppressed Zion state is going to wind up oppressing other people, which is another fun trope we always fall into.
That there are people out there that can fight evil and not become it because they understand the core of what they're combating. There are people that don't understand that and are at risk for being kind of jerk faces after the fight's over. But there are still good people out there. And yeah, just to sort of assumes like, oh, if I am fighting at all, then that makes me inherently evil somehow. That's a little absurd. And there's just this pile of stuff here that is just so bonkers and wrong in this episode. It's hard to sort of navigate it without. It's like, well, there's this, and then there's this other thing, and this is touching on this other issue that's. And so you get the propaganda, you got the the right and wrong, and it's just such a mess that it's hard to even talk about without sounding like an asshole.
Yeah, and there's 3 distinct messages that they go throughout the show, because this show's pretty good at directly telling you what it thinks the message it's giving you is. You start with, you should learn the lessons of history, that even though something looks like it works well, it has some underlying problems that make it actually horrifying. Like, okay, that's not a horrible place to start. Then you get to fascism works great as long as you have the right people in charge. And then you immediately switch to, actually, the problem with fascism, it gives one person too much power, and that's a corrupting influence.
So we got 2 messages that kind of really, really contradict the first.
Yeah, 2 directly contradicting messages, both of which contradict the third message. Also, I get why the U.S. keeps doing this, because a lot of this Nazi stuff was kind of our fault. But this thing that's just like, it's just a fascist problem. Like, this guy came to the planet, was like, hey, you know what's great? Fascism. Let's use that to unify the people. and create like a booming economic system or whatever. And that is somehow inevitably going to lead to racial superiority and ethnic cleansing.
Maybe we should talk about what is fascism.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to argue that fascism is great, but I don't think that it's going to directly turn into Nazi-style ethnic cleansing just 'cause.
Yeah, in fact, some of the historical examples of fascist states, Germany is the one that people are most familiar with. But there's also Italy, which was sort of like, yeah, we don't really care about the whole racial stuff. I guess if we have to, we'll do something, but that's mainly just to not piss off the Germans too much. And they're like, but it was very different sort of focus on what was going on. And that sort of, leads into the fact that, fascist states of various sorts aren't going to be the same as far as their core motivations and outward sort of appearance. It is quite absurd in this particular episode that they're using swastikas, for instance, because there's no reason they couldn't have used a local symbol that would just take the place. Maybe even keep the color scheme, general design, but just put a different, localized symbol there. It's like everyone will pretty much catch on. That's the same thing. It's
also not particularly important, but it did prevent the episode from airing in Germany because of their laws about showing Nazi symbolism on television.
Indeed. They have some rather strict rules on that.
Yeah, they kind of did the thing of like becoming fascist was a bad idea. Maybe we should put some laws in place to make that more difficult in the future.
Yes, and given that fascism is has a lot of sort of always looking back in the traditionalism sort of stuff. Maybe that whole this is a thing from the past fascists the future might seize upon and try to use to propel themselves forward. Maybe we should clamp down on that in particular in order to try to discourage that.
And you're right, we do need to kind of distinguish, because they're talking about fascism as dictatorship, which isn't entirely wrong, but it's a slightly different thing. So like dictatorship and small family run control states where one person or one family is in charge are similar, but fascism moves into a different governmental territory where a small in-group is in charge. They don't necessarily have to be related. There's not really a direct kind of succession of power through bloodlines and things that you get in kind of other kinds of dictatorships, even though it can happen, but it's not necessary.
Indeed.
But it's usually a in-group kind of party leadership versus out-group everybody else sort of thing. It's usually has a lot of misinformation and propaganda involved, which dictatorships can have, but it's not a necessary feature. Mm-hmm. Also, you usually have a lot of kind of military police sort of military state thing going on in a fascist government. It is a kind of wiggly term. It's not really easy to pin down exactly what it is. It's kind of a it when you see it sort of government.
Maybe we should poke at some Umberto Eco here then. That whole essay, Fascism from the 90s. I've read this previously, but I do have sort of the Cliff Notes version of the main points that for these various items, even having one kind of leads into a fascist sort of situation, but they more often pop up in as a group or in some number. So what are some things that tend to happen when you got a fascist system or state going on here? Number one, culture tradition. On our Echos planet, do we got a culture tradition going on, Gepwin?
Sort of.
Just kind of not the local tradition, though.
It's unclear. They introduced a cult of Nazis, so I suppose.
Yeah, and depending on sort of how the education on this planet works and all that, it could be sort of yes, this is the tradition, the history the whole time. It just happens to be from somewhere else. And and propaganda could potentially sort of generate all sorts of myths, and that could definitely happen in a fascist state. So that one's a maybe. All right. Item number 2: the rejection of modernism. Do they got that going on here?
That's They don't go into enough of it to tell.
All right, so
Possibly.
we're gonna say that maybe, but I guess
I suppose this show's pretty pro-modernism, so you can assume the people they're painting as the bad guys would not be.
Generally, yeah. I'm still gonna leave that one as maybe. How about item number 3, the cult of action for action's sake? So to take action and to do things rather than to just sort of sit back and consider things for a little bit.
Seems to be they have the whole invasion, death to Xenon, etc.
So they're definitely looking to do things, not to, and keep talking about we're clearing out the cities and taking care of all the people in our midst, and now we're going to take the fight to them, and etc., and very very bold pronouncements that they are doing things and they're doing them now. So yes, I'd definitely put that one as a yes myself. Disagreement is treason. Do they have disagreement is treason here, Gepwin?
Meaning this anybody who criticizes you is treasonous?
Oh yeah.
Again, you don't see enough to know. You would assume.
I would actually argue yes, because the character Doris, she mentions explicitly that she got sort of her promotion by turning into her own father because he was critical of the state.
That is true.
Yeah. So I would argue for yes, but you are free to disagree and not be a traitor. Fear of difference. Do they got that going on?
Yes, they do. That's basically the entire episode.
Yep. So that's a big check mark there. Appeal to a frustrated middle class.
Possibly. We don't actually see anyone who's not in the military in this episode.
Yeah, which is a little strange. It was very much, either you are in a Nazi uniform of some sort, or you're a Xenon spy and you're in civilian clothes. So I guess everyone's in the military now, which kind of begs the question, why did the Xenon just put on military uniforms too?
I mean, they did, and nobody questioned them at all.
I don't know, maybe they're bad at planning. Anywho, so that one's a big shrug, I guess. Item 7, obsession with a plot and hyping up of enemy external threats, or internal or external threats, but enemies of some sort. Xenophobia. There we go.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Xenophobia.
Yeah, I think they got a lot of xenophobia here, yes.
Subtle.
Yep. Number 8. They are their enemies at the same time very weak but also very strong. The very contradictory, our enemies are powerful and yet they will not be able to stand up against our might. Is that what's something going on here?
Seems to be that, again, we don't get quite enough to know, but we do see the contradictory, like they are weak, horrible people, but also they are invading force we need to defend ourselves against.
Yeah. So I argue it's sort of a yes, but not as clearly as it could be. Pacifism is tracking with the enemy.
Probably. Again, I don't think we get enough backstory, but it does seem to be in that general direction.
Well, the Xenons are explicitly cast as being pacifists before this whole scuffle took on. And Isaac, or I'm just going to call him Isaac, was like, yeah, I used to be a pacifist, but given what happened to me, I guess I can punch a Nazi now. So,
which again is like muddling the thing, because pacifism being equated with being an enemy or traitorous person is a different thing than the people we are portraying as our enemies are already pacifists.
So it's almost like this episode was in part made as a propaganda tool for this fascist state that we're seeing in the episode?
Yeah.
That might actually make more sense than anything else.
I don't know. Do you think America in the 60s wasn't trying to be a fascist state?
I don't know. I was,
How much are they going to criticize a fascist state in the 60s?
Not enough, I'd say.
They're going to play lip service to it, but don't look too close.
Yeah, because otherwise you might question authority here at home. Oh, no. Also, we need to keep fighting the communists in Vietnam, and we'll be victorious, but we need to keep sending people over because we're in trouble. Oh, God.
Yeah, it's almost like they're weak, but also an imminent threat.
Yes. Uh-oh. How about contempt for the weak? This is kind of similar to the previous one, but just slightly different.
I mean, I suppose they got it with the really, really funny critique of Spock as an inferior race.
Yeah, this is where a lot of the sort of, racial superiority stuff tends to come up with when you talk about fascism, where it's very much we need to, purge the undesirables from our society because they make us, weak sort of crap. And we've already in the previously on this show we've told gone through how that's absurd. But that is sort of one of the hallmarks of fascism here, and it's very much on display there in that point. Yes. Next item: everybody is educated to become a hero.
Yeah, like they directly say, they call every frickin' person in the army a hero to the fatherland in this.
Everyone's a superhero. Everyone's a Captain Kirk. Wait a moment. Machismo. So you macho and things like that. They got that there?
Seem to be, but who can tell? It's 60s TV.
Yeah, everyone's a strong-jawed superhero already, so yeah. That one's kind of, don't know here. So next up, selective populism. We got that. Yeah, we've turned around our society using the techniques of the fascism, so that's great for everybody. Haha.
Mm-hmm. We have just such a amazing, great, biting commentary on populism, since the guy's saying obviously random, patriotic-y sounding phrases.
Yep.
as a speech.
Feel good about these things because I am saying the key words that you like.
Yep.
Sort of mealy mouth word vomit. I'm having flashbacks to some stuff recently. I'm not sure what's going on.
We must move forward, not backward. Upward, not forward.
Yes. And always twirling towards freedom. And last item on the list, Newspeak.
Basically.
So what is Newspeak?
Oh, Newspeak is a concept from 1984.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying that you redefine language to better suit the needs of the state. Certain words are emphasized, other words are eliminated, others are created. The general idea being that if you control how someone speaks, you can control how they think about things, because you eliminate the language for them to even consider dissent.
Indeed. So everything kind of falls into place automatically with less effort from those in power. So yeah, we hit in this particular episode, this Planet Echoes here definitely is hitting up more than just a few of these, and so it's definitely more than just sort of the trappings of the fascism. It's pretty much actually is. So that's my argument.
I mean, we're definitely hitting fascism in the thing. They would have to teach the othering-y hatred stuff. Like the argument in the thing is that Gil creates fascism and he wants to use it for good, but then one of the other dudes is like, oh, I could use this for evil if I just take over and demonize these other people.
Kind of, well, we have some of these elements of fascism, but we want more.
And kind of portraying, I don't know, it bothers me that they turned it into an absolute power argument.
Yeah.
Because one, the fascist leaders have a large amount of power. That's not really the problem with consolidation of power. Mm-hmm. It doesn't immediately turn to corruption and horribleness because of the corrupting influence of power itself. It turns to corruption and things because you have consolidated power into one person who can start to consider what's good for them to be good for the country.
There is a how the power is used, and there are certain structures and situations that encourage it to be misused.
Which is often the argument that you get, is like, you can't consolidate power, absolute power, But even, we've talked about this absolute power myth before.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've just kept hearing more and more people talking about this since then, that it seems like power doesn't, corrupt. Power emphasizes.
It amplifies what's already there in the person.
I was hearing this interview very recently with Robert Caro, who wrote The Power Broker and really huge, super well-researched biographies about powerful people and how they, get into and use power.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, from all of his research, he basically came to that notion on his own, that, power doesn't corrupt. It emphasizes what's already there.
Say a lens, in other words.
So you do run into this kind of who would seek power problem.
Mm-hmm.
Often, especially in what we've set up for modern societies, the people who seek power are not the best people.
It's like there's certain incentives that encourage kind of people to seek power.
But if you have something like this, if you have a, one person in absolute control of a state like this, no matter how good or well-intentioned or well-meaning this one person is, they just can't account for everyone. It's going to be slow to change. It's going to be difficult for them to, meet everyone's needs. Having this one tiny seat of power, you only get one perspective on what's going on.
Having more input from a more expansive cross-section society is then going to be more responsive.
Yeah, the more you spread out power, the more you get stuff that's going to help everyone, because everyone's perspective is getting put into the decision making.
Kind of coming back to that point about selective populism, the twist the fascists would use is to say, okay, I believe you on this, in very much quotes of believe there, and I'm going to totally represent your cross-section in society, and you are also the totality of society now, so you have absolute power. And then you just hope no one notices.
Well, that doesn't even matter if anyone notices. You are literally redefining society as the people who are doing okay, therefore everyone in society is doing great.
Exactly. And that's not what reality is at all.
And you intentionally leave out, especially the Nazi ideas that were based on a lot of eugenic policies they got from America. Mm-hmm. They full-on believed that social welfare and the helping of people was going against natural selection. So if someone's not doing well, not only can you define them out as a citizen who doesn't matter for your little fascist in-group, you can define them out as human entirely because they are just a weak person who deserved to die for the betterment of the species.
Beyond even, just outside of society, well beyond, any consideration.
Which is why, if you want to critique fascists, leave it to fascists. If you want to critique Nazis, you need to address your frickin' eugenics problem, Star Trek.
Yep.
In fact, this idea that they don't go into it, but they heavily imply that the only people that they're going after are the Xenons, who are a different species.
They're from another planet entirely.
In this kind of state, you wouldn't just be going after them, you'd be culling out the quote-unquote weak people from your own society as well.
Indeed.
You would have groups of ecos who were being segregated and taken out. People with mental problems and disabilities were also being culled out by the Nazis.
Now, though I haven't finished watching the series, I did watch a certain amount of way through Man of the High Castle, the TV series on the Amazon there. And they very, very clearly sort of point out that, the Nazis here are very much not just killing Jewish folks. They're killing anyone that is, doesn't meet their super specific ideas on what is acceptable and what is not. In fact, there's a subplot about one of the big Nazi people who is informed that his son has a genetic disease that's going to basically make him disabled later in life. And so it's like, do I end his life now, or do I, have him suffer through a more torturous existence later, sort of stuff? And that's not here at all in this episode.
And we do need to point out that yes, the Nazis did demonize and round up and kill other people, not just Jewish people, but their rhetoric and rise to power was so steeped in anti-Semitism itself that you have to that's why people mention Judaism more, because the actual rise to power was steeped in a lot of anti-Semitic traditions, not to belittle that other people were in fact killed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an important distinction to draw.
There's various ethnic groups that just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, like Slavs, Poles, Ukrainians, things like that. Gay and lesbian folks, the disabled, people with different political views or different religions beyond even Judaism. There's a whole smorgasbord of folks that weren't as exterminated in mass as Jewish people, but were definitely targeted as well.
I think right now we're just going over the same ground again, but this is just the problem that you hit when you try to redefine this story as one ethno-state versus another.
Yeah.
It's one fascist ethno-state versus a benevolent ethno-state. You still are running into the same problems when you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So stop. If you're going to make something that's a critique of Nazis, it needs to be a critique of Nazism, not a critique of fascism generally.
If you want to do a critique of fascism generally, you take a very different route.
Yeah, make up a fascist state. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Do it. You can still have the boots. You're allowed to have the boots and still make up your own fascist state.
The boots and the funny military titles, like maybe Gull or something like that.
Oh yeah, but don't even get me started on fucking DS9 and its space Nazis that we're supposed to pal around with and feel sorry for.
We'll get to that a lot later.
Yeah, let's just all forget about the whole genocide thing. They're fun space lizards.
Yeah.
Star Trek has a fascism problem.
Oh, but yeah.
No one talks about it.
Whew. I'm exhausted. Do you want to move on to something else?
Yeah, I think we should move on to something possibly lighter, so maybe it's time for the galaxy's favorite game show!
Woo! Hey everybody, it's time to tally up the points and figure out who today's winners are. The various questions and physical challenges have gone forward, and we now have our today's winners. Our first winner is is Isaac and his crew of Zeons for working against the fascists and other Nazi sort of folks here. They get the Antifa OG award. What do they win, Gipwin?
I think they need some masks and a better logo. It's just, the branding. You don't have any branding. Also, don't ally yourself with Kirk. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's probably going to bite you in the butt here. Because, this spaceman who is associated with the guy who started this whole fascism thing on your planet, I'm not sure you could trust him, honestly. Anywho, our second award goes to Melicon for faking Gil's speeches via trickery and drugs, and it's the It's a Fake award. What does he win?
He wins the book Propaganda by Edward Barnwise, which is an actual book written in 1928, kind of, just before some of the Nazis' rise to power.
So maybe he'll make some interesting use of that? Our third award is the Awkward Cover Story Award, which goes to Kirk and Spock for their various attempts at bluffing, including the ones that just get totally ignored. Like, what are you guys doing? What even is this? What do they win, Gipwin?
Kirk and Spock get the Space Rabbit foot, because their bluffs are just so lucky that they ran into every resistance leader.
Indeed, and they managed to not get shot in the process, as their various shenanigans here.
Also, how much of this army is resistance leaders for them to have not noticed any of this?
I don't know, about 30%. Our final award is the What Prime Directive Award, which goes to John Gill, because seriously, what the hell, guy? Seriously, what are you even trying to do? You're the worst historian in all of fiction, I think. Just screw off, guy. What does he win?
John Gill gets his tenure revoked.
About damn time.
He doesn't deserve it. Also, who is John Gill?
Damn it. Libertarians are striking again. They're promoting fascism once more. I'm done here. I'm out, Gepwin.
I hope that you all enjoy your prizes and your fighting fascism. Except that whole, don't become fascist storyline. So you're not allowed to fight fascism unless you become the monster you fight. Some kind of BS like that. I don't know. It's the galaxy's favorite game show.
I'm not going to listen to such battleship propaganda. We got to fade out here, Gepwin.
I don't even think there's another another Shakespeare reference in the next one. I don't even know what this is.
By any other name?
Yes.
What is a rose? Like, what is a bird? We just don't know.
Would it smell as sweet?
I hope so. Wait, what do birds smell like anyway?
Depends on the bird.
Okay.
There's a species of auklet that smells like tangerines.
That's kind of awesome.
Mm-hmm. Also, auklets are tiny, cute little birds. You should look them up. They're like tiny little, like, puffin-looking things.
How do you spell that?
I think it's A-U-K.
A-U-K. All right. That's where we are. Oh, yeah. They got like this sort of nose-beak thing going on here.
Mm-hmm. And they smell like tangerines.
Fascinating.
So there's also the birds that, like, spray foul-smelling things out to avoid predators. So, yeah. Run the gambit.
So they smell good and bad. Birds of diversity. Excellent. This is a good distraction. Thank you, Kepwin.
I've never heard of this. Distress call, uncharted planet, beam down, finds a humanoid male and female.
And something about invaders from another galaxy again.
Another one?
I don't know. There's something also about geometry. Some sort of, I don't know, third power sort of dimension here.
Spock places himself in a trance. They cross the galactic barrier. Uh-oh, someone's going to get superpowers and they'll have to kill him again.
Sweet. I hope it's me this time.
Wait, what? Wait, the Kelvins reduce all personnel except Kirk, Scotty, Spock, and McCoy into chalk-like blocks.
You're saying that the spaceship is not just a big truck that you can put Starfleet personnel on. It's a series of cubes.
Yep. Also, isn't that like the first episode of Red Dwarf?
No, they turn into piles of
tasty dust.
Yes.
None of this, I can't even make heads or tails of this Wikipedia synopsis, so I don't know what to say about this.
So we'll figure it out what's next time, whatever. Yeah, we're tired now. We're exhausted.
Yeah.
There's just so much in this episode that was just bonkers. Kepwin, save me.
So you can find out how much fascism we have to deal with next week. Join us on Watches of Tomorrow.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, how many aliens from beyond the galaxy is it now? Jeepers! You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.